Thank you very much. I'm glad to be with you today, and I want to talk with you a few minutes about legal principles and steps in handling estates. I've never handled too many large estates, but I've handled a number of small estates over the years. You know, over the years, there's been a great exaggeration about the amount that people have to pay for so-called probate of the estate. Probate is not usually a real complicated procedure, but it can be complicated. I want to talk with you today, though, about some of the savings that you could bring about by taking certain actions, by doing certain types of deeds, for instance. As the audience may know, there's a warranty deed, which is your best deed to get as a buyer. There's a special warranty deed that's probably your next best bet. And then there's the quitclaim deed, which I could deed to you, or you could deed to me the Brooklyn Bridge by quitclaim deed, of course, and you would receive nothing and I would receive nothing. One thing in the way of estate planning and taking care of the future for your spouse is to use the deed that's a joint tenancy with right of survivorship, so that when the spouse passes away, the title automatically goes to the surviving spouse. Now, many years ago, this was seldom done, but this is done frequently now. But if you have a very old deed, you might want to take a look at that old deed and see if one of these joint tenancy with rights of survivorships is not what you need at this time. It may be, but we'd be glad to take a look at it and see. I would mention to you in the title field the attorney, my son, Michael Fundring, who is, I think, very learned in this field. Over the years, in recent years, he's concentrated a lot in that field. And through the Allen Wynns Title Company, he has stated that closing real estate can be a breeze. So if you want a breeze in closing real estate, check with Michael Fundring from that standpoint. Now, one thing that you may want to do with a deed is you may want to remember those that you are absolutely certain you'll want to get your real estate. And you better be sure, because if you do it, it's maybe gone forever. And this is a deed where you deed your property to loved one A. Let's just use the letter A for the person instead of a name. You deed your property to loved one A, and then you reserve to yourself a life interest for the balance of your natural life in and to the title and possession of that property. Now, in doing this, you want to be sure that you're picking the right person. I know a number of years ago, I did one of those, and the person that had me do the deed later informed me that she wanted to change her mind, but then I had to inform her that the party to whom she had deeded her property for the remainder interest after her death had to sign a deed back to her. It took her quite a number of months to get that deed back from the person who she had decided she did not want to have her property. So you want to be careful doing that. That's the same thing, of course, as a trust situation. If you set up a trust on any of your property, you want somebody that you can trust. You don't want to do, of course, and be in the position of the old Mississippi governor who years ago, when a trustee up at Parchman Penitentiary fled his stay at Parchman Penitentiary, they said the governor stated that if you can't trust a trustee, who can you trust? Well, you do want to be able to trust your trustee if you set up a trust. A number of years ago, I did a trust for some folks here in town, and they trusted the sibling that they made trustee. But that trustee didn't go south with the money, she went north with the money. But she was out of state, and not out of mind, but she was out of their reach, practically speaking, in that they didn't think they should sign charges against their sister for taking the trust money and leaving the state with it and using it as her own. Frankly, I think they should have taken court action against the sister, but I guess if you have a loved one that you can forgive for any way they treat you, then maybe you won't sign charges in such situations. But of course, the best thing to do is to avoid giving any trust responsibility to a trustee that you cannot trust in the first place. When we go back and look at the deeds where you deed your property to someone and you reserve the interest and ownership of the property for the remainder of your life, then you'll find that it wouldn't hurt to have the tax assessor office review that deed and be satisfied that you will not lose your homestead exemption by the way that deed is worded. I have done, and Michael has done over the years, quite a number of those deeds, and through the office of the tax assessor, Mr. Benny Goff, we have had those deeds approved that we have done so that the folks that did those deeds retain their right to homestead exemption. So you don't want to lose your homestead exemption rights. The homestead exemption rights is one that I think we've always treasured. Years ago, I was in the legislature, excuse me, and I introduced a bill. And in that bill, it was to broaden homestead exemption so that up to at least $75,000 in value, if you were over 65 years of age, you would get a total homestead exemption on that extent. So that is still on the books, and but nowadays $75,000 is not a real high valuation like it was some 35 years ago. But I think it's still a good law, and maybe that homestead exemption, instead of lowered, should be increased for the benefit of the homeowner at this time. You know, I was looking at the paper this morning, and Senator Wiggins has introduced a bill for 4-year-olds to begin educational programs, and I noticed that he wisely pointed out that it's hard to get too much education. Sometimes people say, well, we need more people working. Well, if you don't want to go to college, then these technical schools are good. Those are good schools, and I'm glad to see that Senator Wiggins and others are supporting education as they should as our state representatives and senators. Let's look a minute at another situation that people use. You know, many years ago, it was said that, as I said earlier, that probating a will was astronomical in fees. Actually, by and large, here in Mississippi, the fees are pretty reasonable on probation. I have heard horror stories in other states, and in fact, one attorney and one judge a number of years ago got out of control handling an estate up in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, in the Forest County area up there, for a large estate up there. But fortunately, they were apprehended for what they had done, and that is by and large corrected, and I think totally corrected in the state of Mississippi, so that you don't have to really feel that you are in danger of being overcharged when an attorney handles an estate. In fact, in our local rules, there's a sign down in the Chancery Clerk's office here that says that if you have an estate, you must have an attorney to file the papers on the estate due to the number of papers that are involved in the complications. Then some estates are quite small, some of these estates are really even less than $500 in value. And when they are less in value, there are some provisions that cut out some of the cost of handling the estate. One of those provisions is a provision that states that you are not required in those situations, those small estates, to run notice to creditors to file their claims within 90 days or lose them. You're not required to do that by newspaper publication expense, but you are required to post such a notice at the courthouse on the poster board there, and in 2 public places out in the county. So even with going into probate, there are some ways to save money. And obviously another way to save money is what we mentioned earlier, by joint tenancy, so that when one passes, the property goes to another. Of course, even with joint tenancy, there's some complication. You need to get the death certificate on record. And one way of getting things on record is an heirship affidavit. I would recommend to you that you do use an attorney for an heirship affidavit. Rough idea of the cost, $250 to $400 maybe, depending on the attorney's schedule of fees. Now let's look a minute at some of the questions that go into an heirship affidavit. If you pass away and you own real estate, then this heirship affidavit is presumed to be correct after a 3-year period that it's on record. And these questions in this heirship affidavit include, of course, giving your age as a lawful age and being of sound mind, and that you're a relative or otherwise well acquainted with the decedent. And then there are a number of questions in there that are answered, and those are listed by the attorney that fills in the form and does the form. And the property is described, and also it's described for the purpose of the Chancery Clerk's office putting the property and the affidavit on record. Well, we're running out of time now, but next I would like to talk with you about the trust situation. And remember that old saying, if you can't trust a trustee, who can you trust? But seriously, you've got to have somebody you can trust, and preferably is reliable in business to handle those trustee situations.
If you own a business and your income at the business meets certain criteria, you may be entitled to a cash settlement because of the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. A court-approved settlement may provide you a cash settlement if you meet certain criteria. My name is Michael Fondren. I'm an attorney with the Fondren Law Firm in Pascagoula, Mississippi. My firm is now accepting claimants for oil spill claims. There are no fees or costs unless we collect. Please contact my firm at 228-762-5110. Thank you.
Marketplace Outlet has moved to 1510 Jackson Avenue, where we have expanded our unique discount designer decor. We've always sold iron beds, hand-painted furniture, dining and pub tables, as well as the largest selection of top-dollar designer bar stools for fractions less than wholesale. Now we've added a huge variety of all-weather furniture, rockers, gliders, benches, swings, loungers, and more in any color desired. Hurry in or you'll miss out on daily arrivals of the top quality at the bottom dollar. That's Marketplace Outlet at their new location at 1510 Jackson Avenue in Pascagoula.
Hi folks, it's good to talk back with you. In an earlier talk, I've discussed some of the ways that you can save some money if you have a real estate and pass away. Then you may want to do, as some attorneys use the phrase, avoid probate. Now, as I've mentioned earlier, probate sometimes gets rather high, but in Mississippi it doesn't usually get out of line like some horror stories I've heard about many thousands of dollars eating up an estate in other states here in America. But one thing you may want to think some about is a trust. And a trust is where you set it up and have a trustee, And it can be a revocable trust or an irrevocable trust. And of course, if you want to be sure that you are not getting into estate taxes, but now few people are because of the millions in exemptions you get from estate taxes nowadays, then you may want to have this trust where it's irrevocable so that it will not get into your estate tax situation. But at any rate, whether your trust is revocable or irrevocable, then you may consider a trust. Now, I wouldn't just hop into a trust. Some people, I think, get into trust where they don't really need to. Now, trust, some people don't even think about this. It's got to be what we call funded. That is, certain property put in the name, in the title of the trust, being held as owned by the trust, whether by bill of sale, deed, or whether by directive to the person that has an annuity or someone else. You can direct that certain property go into the trust, and of course the property that you don't leave or fund into the trust is free of the trust and goes on under regular Mississippi laws of descent and distribution, or is according to your will. But if you use a trust, you may consider that you are saving money. But I have mentioned earlier that often the affidavit of heirship can be used, which can be presumed to be correct after 3 years in the laws of evidence of Mississippi, as provided by state statute. But getting back on the subject of the trust, if you have someone that's disabled in the family, then you might do what's called a Medicaid trust. And in those situations, that money will not go out of the trust for the things that Medicaid provide for, strangely, such as food and shelter. It could go for some extras. Maybe it's a person that needs a computer set up, and that money could come out of the trust to pay for that computer setup, but not go directly to the beneficiary or payee of the trust. That is a strict no-no. That is, the money going directly to the beneficiary. It is to be spent for the use of the beneficiary if you're in that Medicaid situation. And you must use it that way if you're the trustee. Now, earlier I have mentioned, and I do want to repeat, that a trustee must be trustworthy. You must pick someone that's trustworthy, and it's very advisable to pick someone that has good business knowledge, good business experience, because it's a responsible position, just as picking an executor of your estate in a will is picking a responsible position, so that you pick an executor that'll do the work, not complain, be unhappy about having to have the job. In fact, I was jokingly told one time by one gentleman that if you didn't like somebody, make them executor of your will. Of course, that was a joke in that he was kidding, but there are some duties that an executor must take seriously, and you should discuss those seriously with an executor before somebody is either made executor of your will or trustee of your trust. These Medicaid trusts can be useful with those that have disabilities but still wish to remain eligible for Medicaid. Now, another kind of trust is possibly someone that you know that's inclined to spend money freely and unwisely. That is a situation where you could want that person to be the beneficiary of a trust. Because then, though, unlike the Medicaid trust, money can go directly to that person But you can, in the trust, limit the conditions under which that trustee will pay the money to the beneficiary. So that trust is advisable in those situations. Sometimes these folks that will spend a lot of money that unwisely are called spendthrifts. So these trusts that are to protect that money from his or her own spending habits are often referred to as spendthrift trusts. So a spendthrift trust may be what you need as part of your estate planning program. Now, when we look at estate planning programs, there are so many of these ways that you might avoid going to probate, but in Mississippi, as we've said earlier, probate is not extremely expensive, and when we talk of saving money from probate, then I'd like to drift off into another area. Friends of mine have the Marketplace furniture over on Jackson Avenue. That's almost directly south of the Charter Bank. It's directly south of the west side of the Charter Bank near the intersection there of Jackson Avenue and Market Street in Pascagoula. They have the fleur-de-lis of the New Orleans, like the New Orleans Saints on their signs, and they are in a building that's somewhat resemblance a French Quarter building. It's a two-story brick building, and they have furniture, exterior furniture, outdoor furniture on the outside there that you can plainly see as you ride by. 1510 Jackson Avenue, as I recall, is the number. And there, inside though, they have some really fabulous household decor and furniture. They have this furniture at lower prices than the market. They call it Marketplace furniture, but their prices are really lower than the market. So I would recommend that you go by their Marketplace furniture. And when you go by, ask for that 10% discount that they give when you say that Lewis sent you. So get that 10% discount off of their already low prices by telling them that Lewis sent you to get that furniture. Take a close look at their different furniture. You'll find some that's very unusual, very attractive, reasonably priced, and do get your 10% discount there at Marketplace Furniture on Jackson Avenue near Market Street here in Pascagoula. Getting back to the situations, let's look at some family matters. Let's look just a few minutes at some family matters. Sometimes I think people get into the irreconcilable divorce situation too quickly. We're all human. We all make mistakes. And it's good if each one understands or can understand those mistakes that his or her spouse has made along the way. But if that cannot be done, if there's constant turmoil, if there's cruel treatment and carrying on, then possibly an irreconcilable divorce is in order. But I would advise all clients to seek counseling and maybe also seek an attorney and ask that attorney not to rush them into divorce, but to have some suggestion as to how they can work things out. So it was years ago that we had other fault grounds for divorce only in Mississippi. This was back when I was in the Mississippi legislature, and some of us voted in favor of this bill for irreconcilable differences because it seemed that some people were even telling falsehoods about their grounds for divorce and getting a divorce anyway. And in those situations, I think the irreconcilable difference divorce is better than the divorce for faults. That is, where the truthful situation is that differences cannot be reconciled ever, not possibly be reconciled. So it's been good to talk with you regarding our friends Mike and Brenda Foster down at Marketplace Furniture, where you can get 10% off of their already low prices on that beautiful furniture, especially that inside furniture that they have inside. Please go down there and visit with Mike or Brenda or their daughter Megan, and they will show you this beautiful furniture. And please ask them for the 10% discount by saying that Lewis sent you. So I would like to send you down there to Market Street Furniture. But if you're into a real estate situation, you might want to see an attorney that, unlike me, has had perhaps 50 years of scattered out real estate law experience. You may want to see an attorney like Michael Fondren. My son Michael has had possibly, I believe, it's over 20 years now. Been out a long time. You know, time flies. And he's been out a long time, and during at least the past 10 or 15 years of that, he has been one of the best real estate lawyers, in my humble opinion, in this United States of America. Well, it's been good to talk with you, and if we can help you, remember that I'm Lewis Fondren, and I can often be reached over hanging out at 906 Convent Avenue, telephone 228-762-5110, here in Jackson County, of course, just 762-5110. The fax is 769-5110. So give us a call. Give me a call, and on the next program, if you have an item that you would want me to check into, give you an answer on, I'll do it. So have a good day and have a good weekend coming up, and we'll be looking forward to seeing you next trip, next round. We hope to have some interesting people with us so that you're not completely bored at our next meeting. Thank you. God bless you, and God bless America, as our eagle in the background is worded. God bless America.
Marketplace Outlet has moved to 1510 Jackson Avenue, where we have expanded our unique discount designer decor. We've always sold iron beds, hand-painted furniture, dining and pub tables, as well as the largest selection of top-dollar designer bar stools for fractions less than wholesale. Now we've added a huge variety of all-weather furniture, rockers, gliders, benches, swings, loungers, and more in any color desired. Hurry in or you'll miss out on daily arrivals of the top quality at the bottom dollar. That's Marketplace Outlet at their new location at 1510 Jackson Avenue in Pascagoula.
If you own a business and your income at the business meets certain criteria, you may be entitled to a cash settlement because of the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. A court-approved settlement may provide you a cash settlement if you meet certain criteria. My name is Michael Fondren. I'm an attorney with the Fondren Law Firm in Pascagoula, Mississippi. My firm is now accepting claimants for oil spill claims. There are no fees or costs unless we collect. Please contact my firm at 228-762-5110. Thank you.